Charles, thank you, thank you, thank you.
This is called a heather harp. It's 3 octaves, not a floor model.
Let me introduce you, if I can, to our audience today.
Very good. Which way do I look, here or here?
Oh, just look at me.
Oh, okay.
Just look at me the whole time.
All right.
Thank you, Charles, for joining me today. We started out, I think, excuse me, 2 years ago in celebration of PSU's 150th, we started to bring in people across our campus.
By the way, I was here for the 100th, and Harold Hyde was the speaker.
Oh my goodness, you are going to take us back today, I can tell. I have a series of questions for you. I think you are prepared with a few artifacts that you're going to share with our audience. So if you're ready, I'm ready. All set?
Ready?
All right. What year did you come to Plymouth?
1970.
1970. At that time, was it PSU, PSC, PTC?
PSC,
All
Plymouth
right.
State College.
Thank you very much. You don't have to answer this question, but I do ask it of all my people that I invite in. What was your salary when you first started at Plymouth?
$10,000.
All right. Can you remember approximately what the population of the students were at that time in 1970?
1,700.
1,700. So it's starting to grow now. All right, very good.
When
very
Dr.
good.
Hyde took over as president in 51, there were 300. When he left in 1976, there were 3,000. Good man.
He did his job. When did Dr. Hyde come? 1952, 53?
51.
Thank you.
He came after Howard Jones.
All right, there we go, there we go. How many years were you employed at Plymouth State?
43.
43. So you have seen, as I hope you get to know in this half hour that we're together, things changed here during that period of time. 43 years.
Yes.
It's amazing, it's amazing. And what capacity were you hired as?
Supervisor of the computer center. We had one computer. I'll show you a picture of it. I don't know if you can zoom in to get it, but we had an IBM 1130, and it didn't talk to anybody. Whoop, wrong volume, sorry. It's going to be in here. And here I am in 1970. Maybe I should get up, come over and see you. Here I am at the, I was only 30 at the time. How's the monitor looking here? Okay. All right, can you get a good view there?
I think so.
All right.
I think so.
It was the IBM 1130. It took up a whole room, and when it was going full capacity, it used 4,000 watts. To put that in perspective, you go to your kitchen electric stove, you turn on all 4 burners at once and put them on high, and you'll be warmed. How times have changed.
Well, just the size has changed. The size, we've gone from humongous to...
Right.
All right then.
Okay, Exhibit A, we'll put that away. Okay.
When you came here, who hired you?
Dr. Hyde. I came for an interview in January of 70. I was a misfit. I came in the middle.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, and it was John Foley and Dean Duffy and Harold Hyde who did the interview. And it was in the Ellen Reed House. We called it the White House because that's where the president resided at the time. And a few days later, it was a Saturday evening, telephone rang, and it was John Foley. And he said, "We had about 10 applicants, but we want you." Now, get a load of this. It was a Saturday night. Tuesday, classes would start. Wednesday was registration. That's where they all sat around at tables and signed up students. So Sunday, the next day, I packed up the car. I was not married at the time. I packed a few things up, I landed on campus at 9:05 a.m. on Monday. And I had one day to find a place to live, to read the faculty handbook, get acquainted with the computer, because all IBM computers were not alike. And at 2:30 in the afternoon on Tuesday, that was 29 hours and 25 minutes after I set foot on campus, I was teaching Fortran. And I had 64 students, I remember. And over the years, I've had a lot of brilliant students, and I've met wonderful faculty members, and oh, those are good old days. I'll tell you more about it later. Okay.
Outside of teaching your students, the classes, was there any other opportunity for you to interact with students? Didn't know if you were on a committee with students, perhaps?
Well, my job was threefold. 50% of the time I was to teach. 50% of the time I was to help with faculty projects and program for administration. Now, back in those days, you just didn't pick a bunch of cards off a program off the shelf. You wrote it. And thank goodness in graduate school I had a course in statistics. So when the teachers would come, and they would be working on their theses usually, and I would, we want a chi-squared test, we want a one-tailed t-test, a two-tailed t-test, Snedeker's f-test, a Chefet test, and you name it. I had to write all the programs. So that kept me busy. I'd come to work at 8 in the morning and I'd leave about midnight at night.
I want you to say that one more time. You came at 8 in the morning and you left at midnight.
Yeah, I did have time for lunch and supper. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't bread and water.
If I asked you, when you drove across the bridge and came into Plymouth, way back when, what was your thought of the town of Plymouth, the college?
Oh, I loved it. It was a country setting. If I had to live in a city, I'd die. No, this is for me. And it was so funny because my background was chemical engineering. And down at Durham in, let's see, I'll back up a little bit, 1957, October, the Sputnik went up. And in Washington, D.C., oh dear, where are we going to get our mathematicians, our scientists, our engineers? We're lacking. And so I jumped into chemical engineering at Durham in September of '58. We started with 24 students, would-be engineers. In 2 years, 1960, we were down to 6, 75% attrition in 2 years. Well, just to speed fast forward here, I got the BS and MS at Durham, UNH, nice school, they did well. And then I went on to Connecticut and got the PhD in '69.
Connecticut University of?
I'm sorry?
University of Connecticut?
Yes, we called it UConn, but it wasn't in Canada, it was University of Connecticut. And I graduated June 2nd, 1969. In July, on the 20th, a couple of folks named Armstrong and Aldrin hopped out on the surface of the moon. I was looking for a job. Instead of hiring engineers, they were firing engineers. What was I going to do? And fortunately, I used the IBM 1620 and later the 7040 and 7090 computers, and I knew how to program. In fact, in here there's a terrific program that I wrote. Anyway, make it short, PSC needed a person to run their new computer, the IBM 1130. And so anyway, I told you that story. So it all worked out. It looked like after 10 years of college or 11 years of college that it was all for naught, but it wasn't. Your turn.
Another question then. When you got the offer to come to Plymouth State, what was it that you said, yes, I want to come to Plymouth? Now, you've alluded to it already, but why did you want to come to Plymouth?
It was a setting. I was born in New Hampshire, Huggins Hospital across the lake. It was in 1940. In fact, there's a funny story about when I came to retire. I called up Littleton, let them know I was in the pipeline, And they said, oh great, just send us your birth certificate, the one that has the state seal on it. Birth certificate? I never received a birth certificate. At that time, that was in 2013. My folks were long gone. I didn't have a birth certificate. They thought I was a space alien. So I got some time off from my work and here and went over to Wolfboro, and thank goodness there was a person who was nearing retirement age and they remembered my family. I was just lucky, and they located a copy of the certificate, the one that had the state seal on it. I came back up here. Oh, was I happy. I called Littleton, let them know what was going on. But I didn't get Mr. Smith. This time it was a sweet young voice. And I said, oh, what happened to Mr. Smith? Well, since you last talked to him, he retired. Now you have to work fast. I have a lot of stories, but I don't have until 3 o'clock.
Your life has been spent with computers, technology. Can you go back to the very beginning perhaps, and perhaps one of those artifacts that I see there will take us back as well?
They didn't say bytes and things like that years ago. They called them core. Now, this is a core plane, and it's a 4K. There's the first, there's the second, there's the third, and there's the fourth. And these are, it looks like they trap mosquitoes in the screening, but these were magnetic donuts. And you pass a current, say you want to hit that donut, you pass a 1/2 amp, to change the field, a half strength pulse this way, and you go over here and you give it another half, and where they intersect, it'll flip north-south and south-north. And this probably came from Wang Laboratories down in Massachusetts. I used to drive right by their building every time I came from Connecticut. But this amounts to 1 bit. So if you want an 8-bit computer, you'd have to put in a big, look like a laundry basket, you'd have to put 8 of them. If you wanted a 16-bit, you put in another 8, you'd have a 16-bit computer. And of course today we don't need these little magnetic donuts. There are 4 wires that go through each donut. And the 2 that I just mentioned would change the polarity. And then there was a 3rd wire, diagonal, which is a sensor wire, and another diagonal one, which is an erase wire. So to erase your memory, you just hit that 4th wire, bing, 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 and you're clean.
So when was the last time something like this would have been used?
Probably 69.
69.
There.
69.
I got this from a nice IBM salesman who didn't need it anymore.
Wow.
Okay, exhibit
Wow.
number 2 is done. And put that aside. Let's see. This one we've already talked about. Let's see. First computer at Plymouth used this hard drive, hard disk, and it looked like a big oven. You could pop it in the oven, and the magnetic disk inside would rotate to a tune of 1,500 times a minute. And this held an astounding 500,000 bytes. Oh well. And I think I said this, I paid $90 for this in 1970, and it'd be like paying $800 probably today. But this worked for us. Okay, another exhibit done. And then came I should mention, I had to teach how to punch cards, the 80-column Hollerith or IBM cards. Okay, we're done with that one. Going right along. How much time do we have left?
We've got enough, don't worry.
All right.
All right.
All right. This is a true floppy disk, 8 inches, and it held 90,000 bytes, 90 KB. All right, we're done with that. You see, I'm going right along here. And fast forward. I bought the very first gigabyte chip at Radio Shack years ago, and it was $89, and it hold 1 billion bytes. Now, And it was, again, $90 seems to keep ringing here. Anyway, last winter I went out to Walmart, and this little thumb drive has 64 gigabytes. I paid $13 for it. It comes out to 20 cents for a billion bytes. So it went from $89, $90 down to about 20 cents over the years. Okay, I'm all out of gas here. More questions though.
When you think about Plymouth and your decades here, was there someone on this campus that really influenced you?
Oh, I met so many wonderful teachers. Mark Sylvester, Norton Bagley, Barbara Dearborn. Really, it was a lot. In fact, let me tell you about my supervisor. I did a lot of homework since I saw you last week. I knew they'd want to hear about this. So, all right. I had 13 supervisors, and 13 office moves. And going back to 1970, John Foley was my first boss. Then came Thomas Duffy. He was a dean also. He was an associate dean. And in 1971, Dean Richard Brooke took over. They really didn't know where to put me. I was a strange character with the computer, so they plunked me into the business department, and David Kent was the head of it, and so in 1976, David was my new boss. Then I was shared with the math department, Dr. Elwin Wixon, in 1978. I reported to him. Then Paul Girding, who was the director of computer services, that was 79. Mark Shue in computer studies, 1980. In 1981, bingo, we became a department, computer science. And Dr. Taft, William Taft, was my supervisor from 81 to 1990. He lasted the longest. You probably heard the funny story about person was filling out an application for a job, and reason for leaving previous position, sickness. You got sick? No, my boss. Your boss got sick? No, he got sick of me. All right. 1990, Peter Drexel, I reported to as head of the computer science department. 1992, Zhizheng Shen. 1995, Evelyn Stiller. And in 2006, I turned 65 and a half. Bad move. I was sent to the provost's office. It used to be a vice president position, but now it's provost. And they said, well, we have a job for you, but you won't be in the classroom anymore. You'll be in ITS, Information Technology Services. And my new boss was Joanne Gilmet, and that was in 2006, and she was the supervisor until 2011. Dean of the library, David Barone. Now it's spelled B-E-R-O-N-A, but the two little dots over the A mean you don't say it, so it's not Barona, it's Barone. And let's see, he was my last boss here. There's a date that was terrible in my lifetime. It was June 4th, 2013. I was given notice that I had to report to the provost, and I thought it was because I'd been working on a project here in the library. So I took all the big stack of materials over, and the provost said, no, you're not here to talk about your project. You are here to talk about your retirement. Boing! Oh no. I was 73 at the time. And I said, well, I feel I have a lot of mileage left in me. I wouldn't mind working up into my 80s. But that went over like a lead balloon, and I was sent to, it used to be called personnel, now it's H&R, Human Resources. Not H&R Block, but Human Resources. They gave me a separation form to sign. So I lasted until August of 2013, and I hated to go. It wasn't incompetency that I was fired. There's a whole bunch of us that were called undesirables, I guess, too old. You may edit that out. But anyway, the Plymouth years were wonderful. I met so many talented and intelligent people. A couple of people I should have mentioned here, they were supervising special projects. One was Nathaniel Bisson, and he helped me with the Beyond Brown Paper project. And if you go on the internet and type in Beyond Brown Paper, you'll see some of my work, which took from 2006 to 2013. And the Brown Company had all these photographs. Some were glass slides, some were negatives, black and white, positives, black and white, color negatives, color positives. And we had, it's probably still upstairs, we had this scanner, you name it. It was, if it had to do with photography, you could get a picture. And my job was to make it internet ready.
Now, this company that you scanned all these materials for, they're located where? Was it Berlin?
They were in Berlin,
Berlin,
yes.
thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
And they disbanded quite a few years back, and they had all these photographs of the history. And they were trying to find somebody who would take good care of them. They were trying to find a previous employee, but they didn't trust anybody. They were afraid that they'd be discarded. And we were fortunate to have a faculty member, a historian, William Taylor. In 1985, he stepped up and said, "We'll take it." And they rested upstairs here in the library from 1985 to 2006. They were just sitting there. It was an off the beaten track room. And I was the one that finally helped them put it all on the internet. And you can type in Beyond Brown Paper today and you can see thousands and thousands. I think I made over 40,000 copies. They weren't all pictures. Some had writing on the back. And so I was told to if it had writing on it, you get that scanned and you put that in there too.
Wow. I thank Mr. Taylor, I thank you, Charles, for doing this, for preserving that history. So important, so important.
Well, I think that about does it. It's been quite a ride.
Well, let's say what kind of changes have you seen from the very beginning when you came here, you arrived here, even to today?
When I first started, they were renovating the library. Now, this wasn't the current library. This is number 2, renovation number 2. And I saw the Cultural Arts Center go up. That was when, 1990. Back in 1990, I could see it from my classroom window in Rounds Hall. By the way, there was only one time I had to physically restrain a student. This is funny. It was a final exam I was giving. And there was this student who was having a rough time. He got up, walked over to the window. We didn't have screens. He opened the window and put his foot up on the sill. He was going to jump. I went over and I pulled him back. It's the only time I had to physically interact with a student.
Charles, I'm sure that was a joke.
That's a true story.
True story.
That is a true story. And I'll have another one that's interesting. This is when we had the IBM System 3 computer. It was in the cellar of Memorial Hall. It was June of 1973. And unfortunately, my memory still works. And I taught in the evening. It was a summer course. And there was a lightning storm. And halfway into the evening course, boom, there's a lightning strike. It hit somewhere near here. And I kid you not, when I left, I told the class, well, without the computer, we're licked. And the lights went out anyway. You'll all have to go home. And when I left the building, Rounds Hall clock was going backwards. The lightning strike was about 7:20 in the evening. And when I finally left, I still stayed and worked on papers and things, but sometimes a flashlight. But the clock was going backwards. It was something like 20 of 10. It had reversed the fields in the clock machinery. That's a true story.
Wow. Wow.
I have a lot of them, but I can't. Some are too humorous to mention, and I might get sued.
Charles, when you think back of the decades that you served at Plymouth, what was your major contribution? What was your major contribution?
I would say it's introducing 7,000 students to the computer. I enjoyed teaching. It's called value added. You come in here with a head full of mush, and you go out able to program a computer. It was wonderful.
Did many of your students focus in on technology, and they ended up finding a job?
Oh, they did. Yes, I told you the story about trying to get promoted. I won't drag that up here, but I felt that I was doing something good, and people were getting jobs, and that made me feel so good. There was one student in the 1980s who got a job, and he started. Now this is with 1 degree in computer science. I had 3 degrees in engineering, and I'd been teaching for at least 15 years. He got a job with a salary $5,000 over the current salary I was making. I wasn't jealous. I consider that success. If your students can do better than you did, hooray! I'm all for it.
Oh, let's see. I try to end our conversation with the following. If you've learned something from your own past that you would like to share with new people joining the PSU family, what might it be?
All right. It's about teaching. I used to have people come in and look at my lecture work, and afterwards they jump up, well, you ought to try this, you ought to do that, you ought to do that. But it didn't work with me. The students know if they have a phony. I have 2 words of advice to new teachers. Be yourself. Be yourself, because you aren't going to fool anybody. And if the administration doesn't like you, you can quit and probably get a better job. That's my best advice. 2 words.
Is there something that we should have covered today that we haven't?
Oh my, if you had 4 or 5 hours. But after 43 years, there are a lot of stories that I could be telling you. But I met a lot of people in my travels, a lot of gifted students. I wish I could have talked to their parents and said, what did you do? What did you do right? And a lot of the faculty, I couldn't begin to name them all, but people that have come to me. I helped 9 people on the staff get their PhDs. They'd come to me with the data, and well, my advisor says I ought to have a 2-tailed t-test for this, and okay, by that time I had it all written.
Wow.
But it was wonderful, and so with the students in the daytime and the administrators in the night and faculty projects in the night, it was wild. Had a wonderful time.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. And I think you're right. The best part of our position, our job, is working with the students.
Right.
Oh.
That is number one.
And I think I'm the same as you. When you hear about how well some of them have done, it makes you feel good. We've done our job.
Sure. I can't take all the credit because there are a few other teachers. By the way, we started with just 3 instructors in 1981 in the computer science department. There was William Taft, who came from physics. His PhD was in physics. Richard Brooke, whose PhD was in linguistics, and I was in chemical engineering. What a motley crew. None of us would have been hired today.
I want to thank you so much.
Well, you're most welcome.
For joining us and sharing. When I think about institutional history, the people that work here are such an important part of our history.
No doubt about it. And I said it for years, Plymouth State is the best kept secret in central New Hampshire.
Say that one more time and we're going to finish on it.
Okay.
Plymouth State is the best, what did you just say?
Best kept secret in central New Hampshire.
Your voice is better than mine. Thank you, sir. that was too fun.